How?
In the light, we are one.
Hello guys, this is Dwarfs Movies, and today I got a new World of Warcraft role-playing guide. So this one has been the most requested one. For a long time now, people always send me messages about the Paladin RP guide, so I thought I would finally do it. And in this video, I will be covering Paladin roleplay, I will be giving you their lore, and pretty much explaining how everything works. So even if you don't really roleplay, you should check out this video because I will give you the lore of the Paladins, and I will pretty much cover every race and their views on the Paladins. So without further ado, let's just get into it. So before you even think about role-playing a paladin, you really need to understand what the light is. That is the most important part, because the paladins are all about the light and you need to understand the light. So usually I would just suggest a video that I made before in order for you to get a bit of a better understanding, but here it is almost essential that you watch a video I made before covering the light, how it works and all of that in detail, and I will put that on the screen. Pretty much I made that as a part of this video and I kind of split it into two parts, so you should definitely check out that video, as once you watch that entire video you should have a pretty solid understanding of what the light is and how it actually works, because there are a lot of misconceptions. But if you don't really have the time or don't really care to watch it, I'm just gonna give it here. I'll give you like a short definition of the light. So pretty much the light is a force or an energy in the universe that we're in the Warcraft universe, I guess, and it can be used by someone if he believes his cause. That is like the main line. It can be used by someone if he believes his cause. It doesn't even have to be right, it doesn't have to be like a righteous cause. It is a common misconception that the paladins are these super high moral figures that never do anything wrong in their entire life. But that is definitely not the case. I mean, you can see the Scarlet Crusade using the light. Even though we consider them evil, they do terrible things, they kill people, they torture people, and because they believe their cause, they believe they're the right ones, they can use the powers of the light. So the light requires a lot of determination and belief in your cause, and you really have to believe in your mind. You can't have self-doubts and just, you sort of like believe it but you don't. Like, you have to be completely determined, you need a lot of willpower, determination, and you have to believe your cause. So that is pretty much the light in a nutshell. I'm not really gonna go into too much detail here, and there is also a new theory with the light and the life energy that can be like exchanged. It was mostly mentioned in Worlds of Draenor. It is what they said on BlizzCon 2013, that they will add more Paladin lore, and this is the new Paladin lore. There is the entire theory with the light and life energy. This is sort of like a heaven thing in the material plane, I guess, but I covered that in the previous video, so if you want to learn more about it, you should check that out. Now, since we have that out of the way, let's just get into the most important stuff, and that is what you're here for, and that is how to roleplay a paladin, and what is a paladin, and what is the difference between a paladin and a priest, because everyone always asks me this question: what is the difference between a paladin and a priest? And in a sense, a priest is someone who believes in the light greatly, but he doesn't really have the proper hand-to-hand combat training, or just doesn't really prefer close quarters combat. While a paladin is like a mixture between like a warrior and a priest, so it is someone who has the training of a soldier, but also has the study of a priest, so being able to use a weapon and be as strong as a warrior himself, but also being able to call upon the powers of the light to aid him in combat. So now for the main part of this video, I'm just going to get into the paladin races and explain how each one came to be, how they see paladins and how everything works, but I won't really go into every single faction because there's so many of these paladin factions. I will cover a few, but if you really want to learn more about these factions, you should check out the WoW wiki page or the WoWpedia page, because you might want to roleplay to be from like a certain faction or a certain order, because it is important to remember that almost all paladin come from some certain order, and you don't really have these lone wolf paladins or self-taught paladins, so you should probably pick some order, although I will kind of list the most, like the famous ones, I guess, but that will kind of depend on the races. So let's start out with the most influential race, and the first one on Azeroth, and those are the humans. Now, the humans have been practicing the powers of the light for a long time now, but the paladin thing only really happened kind of like 30 years ago or something like that, after the first war, because after the first war the priests proved to be almost useless against the orcish horde. They were completely destroyed and they didn't really get that much of resistance against them, so the Alliance decided to introduce the first paladin order ever, called the Silverhand, which was a mix of combat with the powers of a priest, and thus they created the perfect, I guess it's kinda under quotation marks, defenders of the humankind. I mean, they're seen as the perfect defenders, but they don't really have to be the perfect defenders. Now, in the human society, as I said, they were seen as these perfect figures, righteous white knights, pretty much a perfect figure of justice, but that really proved to not be the case, and that ties with my previous theory that one who follows the light doesn't really have to do the right thing, but as long as he believes that, he is going to get the powers of the light. An example of this would be Artis, who did a lot of bad things, although he did lose the faith in the light and the light abandoned him later on, but that was because he started doubting himself. But you also had the Scarlet Crusade, as I mentioned before, but they practiced the light for a long time, and even the remnants of them still do to this day. Now, there are many human factions, but the main one was the Silver Hand, which later on transformed into the Argent Dawn, and after that, the Argent Dawn, together with the old Silver Hand remnants that didn't join the Argent Dawn, joined together into the Argent Crusade, so that was kinda like the perfect new order. That was like the new Silver Hand, the Argent Crusade, and they took down the Lich King, and they're still active to this day, cleansing the remnants of Lordaeron and mainly the Plague Lands. Now, even though the humans are the first ones on Azeroth, they're definitely not the first ones ever, as of now, because out of all the playable races, or even currently known, the Draenei are the biggest believers of the light, and they had paladins, or as they call them, vindicators, for thousands of years. But their way of the light is a bit different, and in my opinion it is a bit more accurate because they have been taught the ways of the light by the Naru, who are considered to be these pure beings of light. In a way, they could be said to be the light gods. So I honestly think that the Draenei have a bit of a deeper understanding of the light, because they learned from a true source, while the humans don't really understand the light that well. It is said that the humans used to believe in a certain god, although at this point Blizzard said that it was retconned, although it could be possible in the lore that they have maybe learned more about the light, or maybe when the Draenei came, they got a bit more of a better understanding of the light, so they kinda changed their ways. So I would definitely say the Draenei have the more accurate understanding of the light and the light energy and all of that stuff. Now, another thing with the Draenei is that the light is a huge part of their society. I mean, sure, the humans have priests and the heroic paladins, but it is seen as the exceptions in the society, while in a Draenei society being a vindicator isn't anything super rare, and worshipping the light is quite a normal and an everyday thing. So pretty much the Draenei society is just based around the light. They're pretty much the light society, while the humans have that sort of like a religion part, but many of them don't really believe the light, and there's all these different opinions. Now, one race that would be kinda specific when it comes to the Paladins, I would say, are the Blood Elves. They were mainly called the Blood Knights, and they still do exist, and the Blood Elf Paladins are still going even stronger than they were before. Now, when they were the High Elves, they were also Paladins, who mostly got the notion of the light from the humans, and they did worship it. Some did in the traditional manner, others did not, but they kinda had it there, but it wasn't really anything crazy. But when the Third War came and pretty much Artis destroyed 90% of their society, they were completely destroyed and obliterated. They lost the faith in the light, and they just didn't really care too much about the light anymore. They were completely shattered. Now, some years later, Keltas brought a Naru called Muru into Silvermoon, and that is how the Order of the Blood Knights came to be. They pretty much siphoned the power of the Naru and used it to their advantage, and in a sense, it was a very vile thing, as they didn't really believe in the light, but instead they just stole the power and just used it as a tool, just as they did with the arcane magic. Later on, when the Burning Crusade ended, pretty much the entire thing came to a closure because Muru, the Naru, sacrificed himself, and that is the first time when the Blood Elves like really experienced the light. They sort of completely forgot about their magic addiction. They just felt this amazing sense of light, and they kinda changed their opinions, and their views changed quite a bit, especially later on with the help of Velen and his advice. And right now, the views of the Blood Elves are quite split. While the majority of them take the traditional route and they kind of are the Paladins or traditional Paladins, there are still people that see it as a tool more than as just a way of the light, just as they did before. Although they're in a minority right now, and the entire thing is kind of going to a better thing. They're starting to see the light for what it is, instead of just abusing it like they do with the arcane magic. Now, one race that really isn't that prominent when it comes to the light, but they can be paladins, are the dwarves. And they were actually a part of the Silver Hand. They were kind of the original part of the alliance, although they weren't really a prominent part, and they just saw the ways of the light from the humans, but the whole light, like the light way of life thing, wasn't really just going for them, and it wasn't really a big part of them. And there are still dwarf and paladin in the Argent Crusade, and you can see a few here and there in Ironforge and the trainers, and there is also a lot of priests. But recently, after Uldar and the entire new findings of their titanic origin, they're kind of focusing more on the fact that they're the Earthen and they're the creations of the Titans, and they're there to protect the world, and they're thinking more along that path. And they generally, as people, aren't really that religious, and they're not all about the light, and it is really not an integral part of their society. So you can definitely be a paladin, but it's not the same thing as being like a human or a Draenei paladin. And the last race, and the one I always get questions about all the time since I pretty much started the Q&A, are the tauren. And even though it is a bit of a complex thing, it isn't really that complex, but I will try to explain it simply. Now, they really aren't paladin, that's the most important thing you need to remember. They aren't really paladins in a general sense, and I would consider them to be sun druids who worship the Earth Mother. And what they're doing is they're seeking to get balance in their worship due to the previous misconceptions from the Night Elf, who only worship the moon. So the tauren just want to get the entire thing. And if you know, on Azeroth you have the sun and the moon, but since the tauren see Anshie, which is the sun, as one eye of the Earth Mother, and Musha as the other eye, which is also the moon, they fully want to worship the Earth Mother. So they want to worship both the first and the second eye, which is the exact reason why they created the Sunwalkers after the Cataclysm. And yeah, it is a common misconception that a lot of people see them as paladins because they have the exact same paladin powers, but I would just consider them to be druids, and just don't think them as paladins, such as like Tyrion and Uther the Lightbringer, and they come from a faction called the Sunwalkers. Alright, that is all I have for this role-playing guide. Thanks a lot for watching, and do leave your feedback on what you think and also what you would like to see. And as I said, if you want to pick your own Paladin faction, you should find something like the WoW wiki page or the Wowpedia page, because there's many different factions like the Hand of Argus and the Argent Crusade and all that. So if you really want to get into that much detail, you should check it out. But in this video, I kinda mentioned the most important one. Also, feel free to suggest which class you would like to see covered next, but I definitely plan on finishing all of them at some point. I'm not really certain when, but I will try to finish all of them, just as I did for the races, but feel free to leave your own suggestions on which one I should do next. Also, if you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're not subscribed already, as it really helps out the channel and keeps all these videos and guides going. And thanks a lot for taking the time out of your day to watch this video, and see you next time.